Now, welcome to an aggressive negotiations. I think we'll put news from Naboo on pause today because there's not a whole lot of news. So, what is going to be our topic for this?
Should Grogu have stayed with Luke, and what would that mean for Season 3 of The Mandalorian?
Do you mean in story or out? Should he have stayed?
Why not both?
Why not both?
Why not both?
I don't want to be the conspiracy theorist necessarily here, but I would imagine there was some heavy influence from Disney to have him return.
I could understand that.
I know, Favreau has said, it's all part of the plan. He's kind of implied this is his decision. And of course he's going to do that. He's not going to go out front and say, Disney made me do it.
Yeah.
So, and that doesn't mean that I believe he would lie or not lie or anything like that. But all I'm saying is I think there's heavy influence from Disney to be bringing back the character that makes you the most money.
Well, don't forget, Disney just recently talked about how Star Wars is a valuable property. Grogu makes the money.
He does make
makes
the money.
Sales. You can slap that cute little face on anything and people are going to be lining up for him. He's so cute.
Well, yeah, you go into any retail store, you go into the toy department, and most of the Star Wars stuff is Grogu related. I'm not saying there's nothing else,
It's not
but
just for adults. Is you can market stuff to younger people as well.
Which I think there's been difficult. I think we're living in an age where maybe some kids don't play with toys as much as they used to. I mean, when I was a kid, you're playing with toys into your almost your teen years, which sounds sad, but I think most kids nowadays make the transition to video games or they get their iPhone or whatever it might be much.
Tablets, yeah.
They get other things in life much, much earlier than, say, maybe I did when I was a kid or even, not all that long ago. Kids were still playing with toys. So you want to tap that child market, and I think Grogu is a good way to kind of still do that. Mm-hmm. So it's not that I blame Disney, assuming that they have pushed him.
Grogu's a moneymaker.
Yeah, I can't say that, I'm like, oh, you guys, but I can be disappointed that seems to be, he's dictating the story, right?
Do you think that Disney is possibly afraid that taking him away from the series would take away the series' popularity?
Yes, I think absolutely. I personally know multiple people who only watch the show for Grogu. And I mean in my more inner circle. I don't mean I just talk to somebody online. No, I have friends or wives of friends who are like, oh, I love that show. I love Grogu. I'm like, well, what if Grogu wasn't in it? Yeah, probably wouldn't watch it.
He is a drawing factor even when he's not doing anything.
Yeah, and I know, all anecdotal. I know I might have the only 3 people in the world who watch it just for Grogu, but I'm going to assume there's a lot of people who really love the Grogu-Mando dynamic. It's not necessarily just Grogu. They like the dynamic. It works for them, and that's why they like the show.
What's sort of interesting, we've been doing the reviews of The Mandalorian.
Yeah, re-reviews.
Yes. The last episode we reviewed was the only episode in 2 seasons that Grogu is not in. You don't see hide nor hair of Grogu. Yes, he is mentioned and spoke about, but he is not visually in the episode. And it's our least watched one of the reviews.
Well, it is also the most recent, but no, it does seem to be trending a bit lower. Mm-hmm. So is that because of Grogu not being in it? I mean,
and yet all of the others who watch it praise how great the writing is on this episode.
Oh, it's one of the better episodes.
How phenomenal Bill Burr was in it.
Yeah. Yeah, we're talking about the episode.
The Believer.
Yeah, The Believer, episode
Chapter
7 of season
15?
2. Yeah, so the one right before the big finale, where they're kind of looking to find Grogu.
Yes, so they need the information to find
Yes.
Moff Gideon's cruiser.
Well, what's funny to me is I didn't miss him, and I'm not trying to knock Grogu, but I didn't even think about the fact that he wasn't in there.
No,
I mean, well, the episode
we recorded
is about
the entire review, and I didn't even make mention of the fact in it that it's the only episode in 2 seasons Grogu has not made a single appearance.
Yeah, now mind you, it is about finding him, but I didn't miss him. I actually thought the episode was really good, and I don't know if that's because we got Boba Fett and some other great characters in there too. We got Bill Burr's fine performance.
Yes, very good performance.
A lot of kind of cool action. It's a good episode. So,
but it turns back to the standard kind of this is for Star Wars fans type thing. This is a little more adult, a little more grown up. It doesn't have a lot of the little hokey jokes that when you turn the corner, you look, there's Grogu doing something cute or
sipping
funny.
on some soup or doing.
It limits the crowd back to people who just want the Star Wars of it and not the general audience who might really appreciate Grogu's antics.
Yeah, I mean, you can love the show for whatever reason you want. Like I said, I get the people who like the Grogu Mando. I'm not trying to say you're wrong by any stretch. You can love art for whatever reason you love it. But I don't know. I personally, I didn't miss him. It's funny that it took people pointing it out. Like, hey, there's no Grogu in this episode. I'm like, oh yeah, didn't notice.
Didn't notice. because it was just good Star Wars. And
Yeah.
so the general audience might have been like, where was Grogu? And meanwhile, the Star Wars audience is like, this was just a good episode.
Well, it would be interesting if internally, like, Disney somehow noticed the rewatchability of this episode was down, or, people weren't watching it as much.
In general, honestly.
And they were like, whoa, wait a minute. So no Grogu equaled less viewers. So if we have an entire season of no Grogu, it's hard to say Grogu's name so many times. But yeah, how does that affect the series?
Grogu? Yeah, it is hard to say it over and over. I could feel the vocal muscle straining.
Yeah, it doesn't want to happen.
It's too many of the similar syllable.
But as for what it would mean for season 3, I do think it would mean less viewership. Quite honestly. I think there are a lot of people who would not watch it without Grogu. By a lot, I don't mean like half the audience, but a sizable chunk.
It would be an awkward season, I think, because they would have to put Grogu in, but they'd have to make sure they're showing you Grogu with Luke the whole time.
Yeah.
And then you'd wonder, where was the audience? Where did they want to see more? And then the people who want to see more Mando might get less Mando because Disney's going, well, we're getting definitely more praise and comments about, look, there's Luke with Grogu, then there's Mando, and then what does the show evolve into from there?
Yeah, as much as I would love to see Luke and Grogu together, I wouldn't have wanted to see it in The Mandalorian.
No, it would have needed its own show, but then would the popularity of Mando decline?
I think so. I actually think this will be an interesting season because this season seems to be a completely different formula in general.
Right, because they're going to make Grogu seem almost a little more grown up in some ways.
It seems like we're going to actually, I'm assuming from what we've heard, the tidbits, it's assumed here that they're going to do a little bit more with his story. We'll get the backstory. Mm-hmm. He might be becoming like, an official Mandalorian if he isn't kind of already.
An official foundling.
Yeah, all these kind of things might happen, to him this season instead of just he either gets kidnapped or shot at, which is kind of the first 2 seasons of him.
Right, it was kidnapped, shot at, and all that jazz.
Yeah.
But we had people like Pedro Pascal saying that Grogu is not just something worth protecting, he's also a protector.
Yeah.
We've had Jon Favreau come out and say that, he's not a clone, he has his own personality, he has his own story. And that's what they're going to finally give us. They're going to give us Grogu's story, which we haven't gotten for 2 seasons, and I think has been sorely missing in the overall story. But, well, okay, we've been looking after him for 2 seasons now. He's cute and all. What's his deal? We still don't have an answer.
To me, the gimmick kind of runs out after a little while. That's why I was fine with him going off with Luke. And before Book of Boba Fett, it was assumed he wouldn't be back immediately. Mm-hmm. I was thinking he'd be back eventually, but it's like, okay, we'll now see what Mando does without him.
I thought we might get at least half a season without him.
I did too.
And instead they threw that half a season into a different show and threw everybody off.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. People are like, well, Mando is the reason why he changes. So what happens if you take that away now? What if Mando, after a few episodes of no Grogu, does he start sliding back to his old ways? Has receiving the Darksaber and kind of learning more? There are different factions of Mandalorians and, just kind of getting the bigger view of the galaxy. Does that change him too? There are a lot of people who say, without Grogu, he's a boring character or something. I think they set up, I think they set him up through Grogu to be a more interesting character.
Grogu's the one who really brought out his personality. Yeah. Other than that, yes, he was cold, hard steel, hard Beskar, one could say.
Yeah.
He did his jobs, he went about his business, and he had no personality, no life, no spark until Grogu got introduced.
Went and collected bounties, and that was about all he did.
Grogu is the first thing he seems to have really, genuinely cared about outside of just, I'm a Mandalorian, and this is what I do by creed. Yeah. This is, I made a vow, and this is, I keep my vow. But then he got Grogu, and now he's got something he legitimately cares for.
Yeah, I agree.
What's interesting to me is the choice in general that Luke gave to Grogu is a choice that...
So we're going to move more in-story now.
Yes.
We haven't really had much of an aggressive negotiation. I think we're in a lot of agreement here, but...
Well, that's not my fault you agree with what makes sense. But, okay, I guess with in-story we're going now. Luke giving Grogu the choice is very interesting in a lot of ways because, okay, we know prequel Jedi really weren't given a choice. They were taken as children and trained.
Yep.
There was no, you have a choice to leave. I mean, Ahsoka left, but Ahsoka was first kind of cast out of the Order, and she just didn't rejoin.
Yeah, but she got offered to come back.
She did. She got the offer. She got a choice.
Yeah, the Jedi Council even was like, hey, we screwed up. This was your great test. Totally.
She would have come back if she hadn't felt so betrayed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just straight up how it is. If they wouldn't have all immediately turned their backs on her, she would have come back to the Order.
Yeah.
Instead, she felt cast out. and betrayed by the only family she knew at this point.
Yeah.
Moving into Luke, in Grogu's situation, Grogu was given a choice, which is something prequel Jedi generally did not get.
Well, they do have the choice to leave. It's just not, like, presented to them. As you see, Ahsoka walked away. They weren't like, nope, you can't do that. But it's not so much that they offer them the choice as much as it exists.
Right, and well, they don't offer that to them when they're young either.
No.
They have to go through all of the training and pretty much, go through their whole Padawanship, and then they're like, well, I guess if you want the choice, you have to literally ask for it, but no one's going to offer it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
They're not, like, verbally made aware of it on a daily basis. Hey, if this isn't for you, we can set you up down the street at the Flippin' Burgers or something.
Even Luke wasn't really given a choice. He went to Yoda's, and Yoda's like, no, man, if you leave,
we're screwed.
We're done here.
You're our only hope.
Yes, but Luke chose family, which is kind of a beautiful thing. He chose his family. He chose his friends, the family he chose.
Yeah.
He offered that same choice to Grogu probably because of that. Because he understood you can make a choice. You can choose family. You can choose these attachments. But you can still choose to be a Jedi. Because Luke isn't totally isolated. He goes on to train his nephew. He's still in communication with his sister.
But Jedi don't have to isolate them. Attachments doesn't necessarily mean you have someone in your life as much as it means you put too much emphasis on that person, let's say. You're too possessive of them. It's when you say, I can't live without this person, that the problem comes in. And
right, I don't think we see that in Grogu.
No, but I mean, I would definitely argue this is an evolution. So many people get mad at Luke saying, hey, you've got to give up your attachments, when they'll say, but Luke didn't give up his attachments. He's got his friends and his family. And they'll say this is kind of a betrayal of the character. They don't get Luke. I disagree entirely. Like, Luke is giving him the choice. Luke, as you pointed out, Luke never had the choice. It's like, dude, if you don't do this, we're screwed. The Empire's last forever. The Sith are going to rule forever. Anyway. Well, yeah, but my he did eventually leave, but let's leave that alone. My point is, Luke was never given the choice. And now here's this kid who, he seems to have attachments to somebody, and Luke's like, hey, man, if you don't want to do this, I get it. Go be with Mando. I'm giving you that choice.
But at the same time, isn't he presenting a danger to the galaxy? He's sending someone out there who is remembering their training.
But what is his option?
So, unlike what Ahsoka said, Ahsoka's like, better to let his force powers fade.
Yes. See,
but
it's implied if you don't get trained.
Give him to Luke, who Luke is helping him unlock memories of his training. And as you could see even in the trailer, Grogu is still using the Force. Grogu isn't forsaking his training and letting the Force powers, his abilities fade like unused muscles. He's still using them, which means now he's a danger to the galaxy, isn't he? He's out there with attachments and the powers of the Force. He already tried to choke Greef.
Well, I would try to... Oh, not Greef. He tried to choke Kara. Yeah,
yes,
I thought you meant
arm wrestling.
Yeah, I thought you meant he would try to choke Moff Gideon at one point.
No, he was choking out stormtroopers and beating them up. He kind of reaches for his
lightsaber at one point. It's like, I'm sure if he could force choke there, he would have. But my point is, Luke has evolved. He's giving him a choice, and I get what you're saying. And we also have to go back to the whole what Luke said at the end of season 2. Where, having all this ability without training means nothing. Having the power if you don't train it. And I don't think Grogu is fully trained, right? He can do some pretty impressive things. He can force heal.
When he remembers more.
Well, yeah, we don't know just how much training, but
maybe he was a master training the younglings.
Wouldn't that be a twist? He was like Yoda's actual master or something crazy. But no, I think this is what Luke would do, and it kind of irks me that so many people get mad that Luke is giving him the choice. Like, why can't he have his attachments? Because just like Ahsoka says in season 2, like, I see what happens. Like, that's part of being a Jedi is you have to be compassionate to all. You can't favor people. You can't have these loved ones in your life. And Luke is saying, hey, man, if you don't want to give up to Mando, I'm not going to make you do that. But you can't be a Jedi at the same time. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
And yet Grogu loves cake.
Well,
and he will eat it.
Yes. But my point is, I love the choice Luke gave him. I think that is perfectly in character. I think that nails Luke to a T. Because Luke realizes, Luke didn't get the choice, but he realizes, he almost loses himself, right? He almost falls to the dark side because Vader threatens to turn Leia. Mm-hmm. But he realizes at the last minute, I can't get angry. I can't. If I do that, I'm going to become just like my father. That's what happened to my father, and here I am doing the same thing.
But did his attachment to his father save his father?
I think it's his connection to his father. I don't know that he's so much attached. I mean, we can argue about how much does he like have an attachment to Darth Vader. How does he like love his father in terms of I would give anything to save his father? I mean, he does risk a lot to put his faith in his father, right? If Vader doesn't turn back, like that plan doesn't work so well. But I don't know that Vader or Luke is like attached to his father. He's putting his faith into him. And it pays off because he knows his father. Like, why did his father fall to the dark side? Because of his attachments.
So you're saying this could be the birth of Darth Grogu?
I don't think so.
No, they won't do that because the show would be
what
a
is
mess.
interesting, and there are little tidbits, especially when you kind of watch the season kind of compressed. You're watching the episodes back to back instead of week to week in between years. You will see how greedy and selfish Grogu is. You know, he's stealing little. You know, even in the clip we saw for season 3 now, he's stealing little Star Wars Skittles. He's eating somebody's eggs, and he knows.
He knows what they are.
You know, he's fully cognizant of what that is. He's not a true infant. He has memories. He has all these experiences.
He took that kid's cookies when the kid didn't want to share.
Yeah, he's very greedy. He's very selfish. So maybe he shouldn't be trained, right? Maybe it's too far gone for him. That's why we didn't want to train Anakin at 9 years old. He's developed attachments. He's developed too much of...
Or can Mando's influence save him?
Well, I hope we see some of that. I hope one of the reasons to bring Grogu back is to maybe tease that he's going to do some pretty not good things.
Well, if Mando can teach him the ways of the Mandalorians, the Creed, they aren't selfish.
No, they're family-oriented.
They are family-oriented. They're a clan.
Yeah.
And they do what's best for their people, for the clan, for their family, for the foundlings.
So in a way, that might be the best place for him.
To get him past his greed and selfishness. And train him as a Mandalorian with force powers that he uses sometimes.
But he's not going to get full training anymore.
No, he's no longer going to get the full training. He's got to learn his lightning elsewhere.
But no, in universe, would I have preferred Grogu to go with Luke? Yes, because I think that would have been just cooler. But when you actually look at the story, I can understand Grogu making the choice to go back to Mando. Now, does that mean I don't feel like it was, again, influenced by Disney? No, I think they were like, hey, man, we really want you to bring it back. Mm-hmm. And, you know, John and Dave probably sat down and said, well, what if Luke gave him the choice? Wouldn't that make... I mean, again, I think Dave has a pretty good grasp on Star Wars, and John have a pretty good grasp on Star Wars. So, to me, they looked at that and said, that would be what Luke does. Luke would give him the choice because Luke never had the choice. Not to mention, Luke doesn't want to train somebody who potentially will fall to the dark side, like he does with Ben, who probably also had some attachment problems.
Or something.
All right, well, I guess that's going to be all we got for this time. I think I rambled for almost 20 minutes here, even though we didn't really aggressive. I could probably talk about this a lot more because I do think it's
more
in
like
character
me
for
aggressively questioning you.
I've had a lot of friendly discussions and debates about the Luke thing, and a lot of people do not like it. They absolutely hate it, and I'm like, no, man, that's Luke. It's exactly what Luke would do. He wouldn't follow the prequel code of just
he abandoned Yoda on Dagobah, and he went to save his friends.
Yeah. And he paid the price.
There were repercussions to that.
There were huge repercussions, yeah.
Now he realizes, you know what, the best thing to do is to give somebody a choice before you start really training them.
If Vader wanted to kill Luke on Bespin, he's dead. That wasn't the plan. The plan was to turn him, and thankfully for Luke, he was able to resist that. But if the plan had been lure Luke to Bespin and kill him, Luke's dead.
Yeah,
because
no chance.
Yeah, and here he was getting trained as a Jedi to potentially, stop Vader and Palpatine. But he says, "Now I'm going to go save my friends. I'm going to be selfish and save." And I get it. He cares about them. I'm not saying people in the real world can't care about their friends and family, but he chooses that over trying to potentially save the galaxy, and it should have cost him everything. Anyway, I'm rambling again. So take to the comments below. Tell us what you think about any and all of this. Do you agree with Luke giving him the choice, or do you just vehemently disagree? Whatever the case may be, leave your comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.